In 2010, Maya and Dylan were roommates, splitting $800 rent on an apartment with an avocado green refrigerator and a dishwasher that only ran if you slammed it twice. They'd graduated that spring from the same program and both started their first real jobs at $52,000 a year. Financially, you couldn't have told them apart. Fast forward 15 years. Maya just took a job she actually wanted for less money without flinching. Dylan is standing in a service center parking lot at 2 in the morning, tapping a credit card to cover a transmission repair on a matte black truck he financed the month he turned 25. Their incomes never diverged, not once. One of them is free, one is trapped. And it wasn't luck, an inheritance, or income. It was a handful of decisions nobody warned them about. My name is Nick, and today we're breaking down the biggest wealth killers of your 20s and 30s, the ones you have to avoid at all costs. And that truck, hold on to it, we'll come back to it. Now, before we get into this, let me be crystal clear about something. I'm not a financial advisor, and this isn't financial advice. These are just patterns I've watched play out over and over in other people's lives, and embarrassingly, in a few of my own. And here's the reframe that changes everything. Your 20s and 30s are not the warm-up. Most people treat these 2 decades like the practice round, the part that doesn't count, the years you're allowed to be broke and a little reckless before you get serious at 40. That is the single most expensive misunderstanding in all of personal finance. Because of the way compounding works, the dollars you touch between 22 and 40 are the most powerful dollars you will ever hold in your life. They have the most time to grow, which means every wealth killer that eats them doesn't just cost you that money. It costs you everything that money would have eventually become. Maya understood that. Dylan didn't, at least not yet. So let's talk about what's actually eating those dollars, starting with the killer almost nobody notices, because it never once feels like a mistake. It's called lifestyle creep, and it's the wealth killer that gets you one raise at a time. Here's how it works. You get a raise. Congratulations, and within about 2 months, that extra money has quietly disappeared into a slightly nicer apartment. A slightly nicer car, the premium streaming tier, the delivery order instead of the grocery run. Nothing dramatic ever happens, you didn't blow it all in Vegas, your life just expanded to swallow the raise the way a goldfish grows to the exact size of its tank. This is a huge part of why the national savings rate recently fell all the way to about 4%, which means the average American is keeping roughly 4 cents out of every dollar they earn. 4 cents. People are earning more than they ever have in history and saving almost none of it. Because every bump in income gets matched almost perfectly by a bump in spending they never actually agreed to. Here's what makes this one so quietly brutal. Nobody feels it happening. There's no bill that shows up with the words lifestyle creep printed across the top. But let me show you the real price tag. When Maya and Dylan both got a $10,000 raise at 30, Dylan did what most of us do, his life absorbed it, and within a month it was just gone, invisible. Maya invested hers, about $830 a month at a normal 7% return. By the time she retires, that one raise becomes more than $1 million. Same raise, same year. The difference between $1 million and a nicer couch Dylan forgot he even bought. That's the trap. Not that you spend money, it's that a raise feels like a reward you've already earned, when it's really a fork in the road you didn't know you were standing at. So that's killer number 1, and it's the quietest one on the list. Killer number 2 is the loudest, and it's the single most reliable way young people torch that fork. The car. Or in Dylan's case, the matte black truck. I've talked about cars before, and I'll keep talking about them because the numbers somehow keep finding new ways to get worse. The average new car payment in America is now around $770 a month. The average used car payment sits around $530. More than 1 in 6 people with a new car loan are paying over $1,000 a month for a car. The average new car now costs a little over $49,000, more than 30% higher than it was just before the pandemic. That's a mortgage-sized payment in a lot of this country. Except this house loses a fifth of its value the second you drive it home. And that's the part that gets me. A new car drops about 10% of its value the instant you pull off the lot, and around 20% in the first year alone. You are financing an asset that is sprinting away from you faster than you can pay it down. This is why almost 30% of people trading in a car right now owe more on it than the thing is worth, and the average person in that hole is underwater by more than $7,000. So they roll that $7,000 into the next loan on the next car that's also going to lose value, and now the payment is over $900 a month stretched across 84 months. That's a 7-year loan on a machine that'll be worth almost nothing by the time it's paid off. It's a financial hamster wheel, except the hamster is on fire and somehow still making the payments. But here's the number that should actually keep you up at night, and it's not the $770, it's what that money could have quietly become. Dylan's truck payment was around $770. Maya bought a boring, reliable used car with a $300 payment and invested the difference, just the difference, at 8%. Over 30 years, that gap becomes about $700,000. That's the true cost of Dylan's truck, not the money he handed the dealer, the money he never got to invest. Cars aren't wealth killers because they cost money, everything costs money. They're wealth killers because they cost you the enormous thing that money would have grown into. If the car is how you light the match, killer number 3 is how you keep it burning for years: credit card debt. Americans currently owe roughly $1.25 trillion on credit cards, a record high set at the end of last year. The average interest rate on cards that carry a balance is now around 22%. For perspective, a mortgage costs about 7%, a car loan roughly 7.5%. Your credit card charges 3 times what a house costs. It is, by a wide margin, the most expensive money most people will ever borrow. And the grim part is they're increasingly borrowing it for groceries and gas, not luxuries. Here's the mechanic of the trap. At around 18% interest, a balance you never pay down roughly doubles in about 4 years. So that $400 thing becomes $800, and by then you don't even remember buying it. The average balance people carry is around $6,700. Make only the minimum payment on that, and it takes you over 18 years to clear and costs more than $14,000 total. Sit with that for a second. You'd still be paying for tonight's dinner when the kid you haven't had yet is in high school. That's not a budgeting problem. That's a math trap with a really friendly looking piece of plastic on the front. And there's a newer, sneakier version hunting people in their 20s right now: buy now, pay later. Nearly 2/3 of Gen Z has used it, and about a quarter of people are now using these little installment plans to buy groceries. Groceries split into 4 easy payments. Dylan had 4 of them running at once and couldn't have told you the total to save his life, and he's not unusual. 2/3 of users have several loans going at the same time, a thing the industry sweetly calls loan stacking, and the rest of us call having no idea how much you owe. Almost 40% of users say it makes spending feel less real, like it isn't quite money, it barely shows up on your credit report, and it barely shows up in your own head. It's debt wearing a tiny, cheerful costume. Now, here's what ties those first 3 together. They're really just symptoms of killer number 4, the one that costs the most while hurting the least: waiting. Just waiting, quietly deciding you'll start investing later. Once things settle down, once you make a little more, once the debt's gone. And I get it, when you're young, later feels free. It costs nothing today. But compounding makes later the single most expensive word in the English language, and I can prove it in about 30 seconds. Maya started investing $500 a month at 25. At a normal, boring 7%, she'll have about $1.3 million by 65. Dylan started the exact same $500 a month. He just waited until 35 once he felt ready. He'll end up with around $600,000. Same monthly amount, he only skipped 10 years at the very start. Those 10 years cost him roughly $700,000. He didn't invest half as much as Maya, he invested almost exactly the same. He just started the clock a decade late, and it turns out the clock was the entire game the whole time. Compounding is the one place in life where showing up early and then being lazy beats showing up late and trying hard. And it gets worse because a lot of you are being handed free money right now and turning it down without realizing it. Around 1 in 4 people with a 401 don't put in enough to get their full employer match. That match is free money. It's an instant guaranteed 50 to 100% return, which does not exist anywhere else in the entire known universe. Your bank will never call to offer you double your deposit, but your employer literally is, and a quarter of people let it go to voicemail. Usually you just have to contribute about 5% to capture all of it. The average person leaving it behind walks away from roughly $3,000 a year. Invested over a career that ignored free money alone is worth around $300,000. And here's where the median matters. Because the average retirement account makes things look fine, the median household under 35 has under $20,000 saved. Half have less than that. This was never a rich versus poor story, it's an early versus late one. So you might be thinking, okay, Nick, I'll just fire every dollar I own into the market and keep zero cash around. And that's killer number 5, coming at you from the opposite direction, having no emergency fund. Here's exactly what happens without one. Life sends you a bill you didn't plan for, a car repair, an ER visit, a water heater that dies the worst possible week, and right now, only about 47% of Americans could cover a $1,000 emergency out of savings. The median emergency fund has dropped to around $5,000, half of what people reported a year earlier. So most people, when life happens, reach for a credit card at 22%. And now that $800 repair quietly costs $1,300 by the time it's paid off. This is the killer that makes every other killer worse, because it's the amplifier. Without a buffer, every small disaster gets routed straight into high-interest debt, or something scarier. People without emergency savings are 13 times more likely to raid their own retirement account just to survive the month. Nearly a third of people now carry more credit card debt than they have in savings. So Dylan's missing $1,000 in a savings account reaches all the way back through time and detonates the compounding we just fell in love with. One bad month, and he's paying penalties for the privilege of borrowing from his own future self. It's the 2 in the morning parking lot. It's checking your bank balance before you buy groceries. It's praying the light stays green on the dashboard for one more paycheck. And I want to stop here and say something, because if you're recognizing yourself in 3 or 4 of these, I don't want you to feel stupid. You're not stupid. Not even a little. This system was never designed to be survived on instinct. And nobody in any of these transactions has the slightest incentive to teach you otherwise. The dealership makes its money on the long loan, the card company makes its money on the balance you carry, the app makes its money on the impulse. Not one of them makes a single dollar when you calmly build a boring emergency fund and invest the difference, so nobody ever taught you to. That's exactly why we built a school community where regular people work through all 6 of these without anyone trying to sell them something shiny. The link's in the description if you want in. Because you were never meant to fight all of this at once, alone, with no map and no allies. Which brings me to killer number 6, the sneakiest of them all. Because it disguises itself as success, spending to look rich, and its evil twin, trying to be too clever with the money you do invest. The looking rich part is simple. Marketing stopped selling you products a long time ago and started selling you identities. The truck isn't a truck, it's a personality. The watch isn't a watch, it's a scoreboard. So people spend money they don't have on things they don't need to impress people who aren't thinking about them at all. It's the most expensive game on the planet, and the grand prize for winning is that a few strangers you'll never meet briefly assume you might be doing okay. Dylan's truck was never transportation. It was a billboard, and he was paying $770 a month to advertise a version of himself that didn't quite exist yet. But there's a subtler version that trips up even the disciplined people who dodged everything else. Once you finally do start investing, you get this itch to be brilliant at it, To outsmart the whole thing, jump out when the news looks scary. Jump back in when it feels safe. And here's the brutal, kind of beautiful data on how that goes. Over the last 20 years, the market itself returned a little over 10% a year. The average actual investor in that same market earned about 9.2. They underperformed the very thing they were invested in purely by fidgeting with it. The danger was never that you'd pick bad investments, it's that you'll pick perfectly good ones and panic sell them at the worst possible moment because a headline scared you. On $100,000 over 20 years, that fidgeting is the difference between about $700,000 and $580,000. You'd have paid $120,000 for the fleeting privilege of feeling clever on a Tuesday. So let's zoom out. Lifestyle creep, the truck, the cards, the waiting, the missing safety net, and the ego. 6 killers, but notice they aren't really 6 separate problems. They're the same single problem wearing 6 different outfits. Every one of them takes your most valuable, most time rich dollars, the exact ones you'll only ever have in your 20s and 30s, and quietly redirects them away from your future and towards somebody else's. That's the whole trick. It was never one giant catastrophe you could see coming. It's 1,000 small, reasonable feeling leaks, each one wearing a friendly face. And now, that truck. Remember Dylan in the parking lot at 2 in the morning tapping his card to fix a transmission? That's the same matte black truck he financed the month he turned 25, still costing him money 15 years later, not just the repair, but every dollar that payment never got to become. Maya drove something boring the entire time. And it's the reason she could take the job she actually wanted for less money and not even flinch. Same income as Dylan, the whole way through. The only thing that ever separated the free one from the trapped one was which of these 6 they saw coming. So here's the one line I want you to actually keep. You don't get to choose whether the clock runs, it's running right now for all of us. You only get to choose whether it's running for you or against you. That's the entire game. Avoiding these 6 isn't about being cheap or joyless or eating plain rice in the dark for a decade. It's the opposite. Every one of these killers is a trade where you hand over a piece of your freedom for something that only looks like status. Dodging them buys the freedom back, one decision at a time. You're going to spend your 20s and 30s either way. The only question is whether at 40 you're standing on a foundation or standing at the bottom of a hole you spent 15 years decorating really, really nicely. So pick one of the 6 today and start. Because 10 years from now, you're going to do one of 2 things. Quietly thank yourself or wish so badly that you had.